Welcome to the Fight for Resistance podcast. It's Uncle Fox Matone, and today's episode is going to be a little personal. From the Elem Pomo tribe in Clearlake, Oaks, California, to Oak Flat here in Arizona. I'll be sharing what I've seen and experienced living next to this Sulphur Bank Mine. So on my dad's side, Elem Pomo, I spent half of my childhood and teenage years living right next to the Sulphur Bank mercury mine. That mine sits on the eastern shore of the lake, which is called Clearlake, just above our tribal lands. It started back in the 1860s, first for sulfur and then for mercury from 1873 to 1957. Clearlake is the largest lake in California. So here's what they did at Sulphur Bank. They extracted the cinnabar, which is mercury ore, and heated it to vaporize the mercury. What was left behind, toxic waste rock, tailings, and something called calcines, were dumped near the shoreline or even directly into the lake. During the storms, mercury-laced soil would wash into the lake. Some of this waste piles were even used to expand land area by pushing them right into the water. So that's how mercury entered the lake bed, where it got into the fish and into the water. And it's still happening. The EPA named it a Superfund site in 1990, but the cleanup is still not done. There's still mercury in the sediments, still restrictions on fishing, swimming, and warning signs on where and when you can walk in certain areas. My people were told they could build homes on this land, but the tailings were used from the mine to build the foundations of our homes. With this, many of our tribal members have died from cancer, including my grandfather Jim Brown Sr., who worked at the mine. He was 59 years old when he passed. My aunts, my uncles, my cousins, and recently in 2023, my father Thomas Brown passed from cancer. They all grew up near the mine since birth, eating fish, playing in the mine caves, and swimming in the lake. At the time, they didn't know how toxic everything was around them. And on my mom's side, I'm St. Carlos Apache, and when I see what's happening at Oak Flat, it brings back everything we've been through at Elem. The copper mine proposed by Resident Copper would destroy Oak Flat, not just the land, but the water, the plants, the spiritual lifelines that connect us to that place. And copper mining is like mercury mining, coming with toxic waste, acid mine drainage, and contamination, and that will last for generations. If the mine at Oak Flat is approved, we'll be watching the same story play all over again. So many grounds turned to danger zones, clean water made unsafe, and the health of local communities will be sacrificed just for profit. We have to fight to protect it for the land, for the future, and for all the voices that can't speak anymore. So on my mom's side, the St. Carlos Apache tribe, my grandfather passed away from leukemia at the age of 39, working at an asbestos mine. So mining has really hit me on both sides of the family. Now at Oak Flat, it's being threatened, and it feels like I'm watching the same story unfold. When we talk about copper mining at Oak Flat, we need to understand what that really means, not just for the economy, but for the land, the water, and the people. Copper mining might sound clean or modern, but it's not clean. It leaves behind a long trail of destruction. And like I said, I've seen this firsthand. How it works, first, there's something called acid mine drainage. When copper ore, especially sulfur-rich rock, is exposed to air and water, it creates sulfuric acid, which smells like rotten eggs. I know firsthand of that, smelling that from Elem. The acid can pull lead, arsenic, and other toxins from the rock. Those toxins then make their way into the streams, springs, and groundwater, making the water too acidic for fish, plants, or insects to survive. Then you got toxic tailings. What's left over copper is extracted. This waste is dumped into the huge tailing dams. These dams have failed before in places like Brazil, Canada, and other parts of the world, leaking toxic sludge full of mercury, arsenic, and heavy metals into the entire ecosystem. And it keeps going. The smelting process releases sulfuric dioxide in the air, which leads to acid rain and causes breathing problems. Dust from mining operations can carry toxic particles that settle into the soil or even to people's lungs. Copper mining also demands million gallons of water, which is very dangerous in dry regions like Arizona, that puts springs, rivers, and communities well at risk. Who suffers first? It's always the tribes, local communities, towns, and small farmers, and the wildlife that depend on the land. And the damage doesn't just last a few years, it can last for generations, especially when there's no real plan to clean up. EPA will come in after the destruction. I've seen this already growing up around the Sulphur Bank mercury mine at Elem. My people are still dealing with this mercury contamination to this day. So when I hear that the copper mine is coming to Oak Flat, I already know what's coming. If we let this mine go through, the contamination won't stop at the boundaries of the project site. It'll spread in the soil, the water, and in the lives of the next generation. So let's talk about mining method residue copper wants to use at Oak Flat. It's called block caving, and it's one of the most destructive forms of underground mining. So this is how it works. They go deep underground, blast the copper ore body from underneath, and that weakens the rock. Then they let the gravity do the rest. The rock will collapse into a huge underground cave, and then they will collect the broken ore at the bottom. It's cheaper than traditional mining, but the real cost comes later, because when you collapse the earth from the below, it doesn't just stay underground. The surface above eventually caves in. Resolute Copper has admitted that their plan would create a crater nearly 2 miles wide and over 1,000 feet deep, swelling Oak Flat, including oak trees, springs, and ceremonial sites. So this is not just surface damage. Block caving permanently alters the whole landscape. It cracks subsurface layers, drains underground water tables, and destroys the natural balance of the land. Oak Flat sits on a complex groundwater system. If that is disrupted, springs can dry up, aquifers can collapse, and toxic runoff, heavy metals, acidic water can leak into the water systems. And here's the most important part. Once block caving starts, it cannot be reversed. You can't stop the collapse, you can't refill the craters, and you can't bring back the land, water, acorn, and plants. This method will destroy everything, and it's not just a risk, it's a guarantee. We're not talking about what might happen, we're talking about what will happen if we don't stop this mine. Resolution Copper says that their mine won't affect Apache Leap, but honestly, if they're using a method that collapses the earth from 1,000 feet underground, and you're going to create a crater nearly 2 miles wide, how is that not going to affect Apache Leap? Block caving doesn't destroy the ore body, it fractures the land above and everything around it. Apache Leap may sit outside the official boundary now, but once the earth starts to cave, groundwater can drain and the entire area will be disrupted. Maybe not today, maybe not next year, but once the ground starts collapsing, Apache Leap will follow, and that's something we cannot allow. So let's talk about the water, because the mine at Oak Flat isn't just a threat to sacred land, it's a threat to every community that depends on Arizona water. The proposed Resolution Copper mine is projected to use 250 billion gallons of water over its operational life. That's equivalent to what a city of 140,000 people would use in a full year, and it's coming directly from the Arizona groundwater. Here's the part that everyone needs to hear. Arizona is already in a water crisis. The Colorado River is drying up. Farmers, tribal communities, and small towns are being told to cut back, but this foreign-owned mining company is getting the green light to drain aquifers without limits. Why? Because of a loophole. Under the Arizona Groundwater Management Act of 1980, the powerful mining industry was exempt from restrictions on how much groundwater they can pump. That means Resolution Copper can extract as much water as they want without paying the state, without capping the usage, and without having to replace what they take. While cities and farmers are trying to conserve, mining operations are allowed to consume water without restrictions, and that impact is devastating. Springs dry up, aquifers drop, the land will sink, the earth caves from groundwater loss, wildlife disappears, and the entire ecosystem shifts or collapses. If the mine uses over 500 acre-feet per year, which Resolution Copper definitely will, they're supposed to recycle the water and minimize the waste. But these requirements are so soft for a mining company with exemptions. And it's not just an Indigenous issue, because when the groundwater drops, everyone suffers in Superior, Globe, Miami, and beyond. Once the water is gone, it's not coming back. This mine will take 250 billion gallons, poison the water it doesn't use, and leave behind a legacy of environmental damage. Now let's talk about the bigger picture, the copper itself. Resolution Copper says that this mine is about meeting demand, about keeping America supplied, but most of this copper won't even stay here. In 2023, the U.S. mined about 1.23 million metric tons of copper. We don't have the capacity to refine most of it because we only have 3 smelters left in this country. I read that there's only one in Arizona, one in Utah, and one in Michigan. So what happens? We ship the raw copper overseas, mostly to China, which controls over 50% of the world's copper refinery capacity. They refine the ore into copper cathodes, wire, products for EVs, techs, infrastructure. Then we buy it back at a higher price. So during the times of conflict tension with China or anyone else refining our copper, they can keep what they want. So to break it down, they mine the copper at Oak Flat, then ship it overseas because U.S. don't have the infrastructure to finish the job. Then the U.S. buy it back, the foreign countries profit, and then we deal with the environmental destruction. In 2023, the U.S. exported over 341,000 metric tons of raw copper, which generates $2 billion in refined copper. The U.S. government is sacrificing our land, our water, and our communities, and they're not keeping the full value. China benefits twice, once from refining the profits, and again by using the copper for their own growth that they kept. Oak Flat is being turned into a sacrifice zone for systems that don't serve the people who live here. This isn't about American energy, it's about the foreign companies making American land expendable. So Resolute Copper says that they're going to bring jobs and investment to the people of Superior. But we've heard this before across so many tribal lands and small towns. These promises are a smokescreen for what really happens. Mining companies show up with jobs, and then they leave behind poisoned water, collapsed land, and a community that can't drink from its own well. The truth is, the jobs they're promising are short-term. Here's what they don't say. Most of the high-paying technical jobs go out to out-of-state contractors with specialized training. Locals are often left with entry-level work if they're hired at all. And when the mine shuts down, whether it's 10 years or 40, people are left with no career pipeline, just unemployment and poisoned homeland. The company gets what it wants, and when it's done, just walks away. There's no guarantee that those jobs will go to local communities. No guarantee that the economy of Superior will thrive when the dust settles. And there's no plan to replace what's lost when the water is gone and the land is no longer safe to walk on. The thing is, Oak Flat could be something else entirely. Right now, Resolution Copper is pushing that this mine is the only way forward, that we either accept destruction or we accept poverty, but that's a lie. Experts said that if Oak Flat were preserved, if the land was protected and respected and honored, Superior could become more profitable than Sedona. We're talking about tourism, rock climbing, cultural education centers, and hiking that bring people from all over the world, not to destroy the land, but to learn from it. People don't travel to see copper mines, they travel to experience beauty and connect to Mother Earth. Superior could become a destination town like Sedona or Jerome. That's not just wishful thinking, that's a real economy, one that grows over the time instead of burning through the land and leaving it dead. And it doesn't come with poisoned water, craters, or cancer. Because really, what kind of community are we left with when the water is contaminated, the air is toxic, and with Oak Flat being gone? What happens to the community when this beautiful land that carries beauty and history is buried underneath toxic waste? Big companies show up, promise jobs, and when the land is stripped, they leave. A better future is possible, one where the land is alive, the culture is thriving, and the community is stronger because they chose the protection of Oak Flat over profit. So what happens at Oak Flat will affect everyone who lives in this region, from Superior to Globe to Miami to farms to water systems that feed this desert. We're talking about millions of gallons of water being drained from aquifers we rely on. We're talking about toxic waste, air pollution, and ground collapse, not just on sacred land, but in the backyards of everyday people. The mine won't stop at the edge of Oak Flat. Pollution doesn't follow boundary lines. When the groundwater is contaminated or depleted, everyone suffers, indigenous or not. If you hike here, if you live here, if you raise your kids here, this is your fight too. We've seen what happens when we ignore the warnings. Clearlake is still hurting and still healing with the Sulphur Bank Mine. Let's not make the same mistake at Oak Flat. This episode is for those who care about the land, water, and wildlife. For those who think this doesn't affect them, it does. So share this episode. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your city council, stand up while there's still time, not just for Oak Flat, but for the land and the water that gives life to all of us. Till next time, keep fighting for our existence.
Thank you all for tuning in to the Fight for Existence podcast. If you guys want to keep up with the podcast in general, what you could do is follow the social media account. The Instagram account is going to be Fight for Our Existence. Again, that's Fight number 4 Our Existence. Go ahead and give that a follow. And if you guys have any questions for us or you guys would like to be on the podcast, in the Instagram, there's a link. Go ahead and click that. No matter what kind of platform you guys are listening to this podcast on, there's always that plus or that follow button. So go ahead and click that so you guys can get notifications when we upload our next episode. And if you guys are listening on Spotify, what you can do is go ahead and rate the show. And if you guys are only listening on Apple Podcasts, what you can also do is write a review for the show. Thank you all for tuning in to the Fight for Existence podcast, and we will talk to you next time.